Okay, this is part 3 of Plato, quotes from Plato. All right, we'll start out with, the cave was his best metaphor and allegory, and he had other ones. He talked about the intellect being like a charioteer that rides the emotions. And yeah, you got to develop the ability to control those emotions to make yourself smarter. Okay, we talked about the cave being where Socrates is the one who had escaped, and then he comes back to teach the cave dwellers, and they don't like it when they're faced with objective reality. They often reject the person who has found true light and objective truth. I'm the perfect example, okay? I'm ostracized everywhere because I tell you the truth. I don't BS you like the high-fat phonies, okay? I don't sell you drugs or supplements, you know. Anyways, let's see what else. The whole thing about the cave. We went through that already with the fire in the back and then the false stories. Those who tell the stories control the society. And it's really a powerful control because they don't just control the present in brainwashing people. They control the past because they rewrite the past. And all the stupid pros don't know the difference. So that's a lot of power. And to some extent, they control the future because they shape opinion, which determines what happens in the future. And they put a peer pressure that basically you must comply or you will be erased from the future. Kind of scary, huh? Those who are able to see beyond the shadows and the lies of their culture will never be understood, yet alone believed by the masses. Yeah, I can tell you from numerous experience, when I talk to some patient who doesn't know anything about nutrition, epidemiology, toxicology, and I start talking about it, they roll their eyes, look at me like I'm stupid or I'm being weird, There's a confidence that comes from being a stupid ignoramus that you're always in the majority. Okay, obviously Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, they were all great geniuses, but there's been some criticism of them, rightfully so. Edward de Bono, he called them the Greek gang of three, and he said they overemphasize critical thinking and they underemphasize creative thinking. He says 2,400 years ago, the Greek gang of three, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, started to think based on analysis, judgment, knowledge. And then later on, the Catholic Church, who ran the schools and universities, they wanted logic to prove the heretics were wrong. And so they developed logical thinking, okay, but they never developed perceptual thinking and creative thinking. Edward de Bono had his own method he called the 6 thinking hats, meaning trying to look at something from 6 different perspectives, which is very much like, the proverb about the 6 blind men and an elephant, to come out with a way, what he called parallel thinking, being able to see things in a different way so you'd be more capable of generating creative ideas. Okay, Robert Pirsig says that Socrates and Plato used rhetoric, sophistry of their own to slander their opponents and basically use the same techniques they were accusing the other sophists of using. Okay, the sophists were often very smart men who traveled from different city to different city, so they came in with new ideas, not to mention their skill in oratory. And you can say that rhetoric is just used, as Socrates said, as Plato said, to deceive people, but the reality is it's used to communicate more effectively, to make things more memorable. It's the choice of the speaker if they're going to tell the truth or not. Okay, Robert Pirsig. Phaedrus began to wonder, Phaedrus is like a student, began to wonder if the dialectic had some special meaning that made it a fulcrum word, one that can shift the balance of an argument depending on how it was placed, and it was. Pirsig continues, the halo around the heads of Plato and Socrates is now gone. Phaedrus sees that they have consistently are doing exactly that which they accuse the sophists of doing, using emotionally persuasive language for the ulterior purpose of making the weaker argument, like the case for the dialectic, appear the stronger. Okay. And, Socrates, I think, was a really great man. And Socrates, like I said, he had very much Christ-like values and attitudes and teachings. He basically said, always do what is right, what is just. That is good for your soul, and it's better to be wronged by someone else than for you to do wrong to someone else. Okay, so he had a lot of nice things to say. Not always real practical. He always said the just man is happier. Not necessarily in my experience. Sometimes the wise thing to do is just run away, okay? Because the good guys don't always win. They lose a lot. Okay, and he did give us the great method of Socratic dialogue for questioning down to the truth, asymptotically approaching the truth through a series of questions. Okay. Daniel Robinson, philosophy teacher at thegreatcourses.com, in Wondrum, he said, some have joked that the Socratic method should be called the sarcastic method. It can be used in that way. Plato, The noblest of all studies is the study of what man is and what life he should live. That really kind of sounds like Socrates. Okay, Socrates, knowledge of what is good for us helps us to live a good life. Yes, that's true. Knowledge is the food of the soul, said Plato. Those who are able to see beyond the shadows and the lies of their culture will never be understood, let alone believed by the masses. Yeah, that's how I feel like when I tell everybody what's going on. They look at me like I get no emotional reaction to that. It's so obvious. Plato, no man is more hated than he who speaks the truth. Yes. Socrates, do not be deceived. One must accurately know the similarity and dissimilarity of things. Yes. Okay, well, that's it for part 3 of Plato's Quotes. We'll come back with part 4 tomorrow. Hope you found that helpful.